Okay. Hello and welcome wherever you're listening to and watching 2020 Coaching Convos, passionately curious with me, Julie Crabb, as usual. And I'm doing what I love once again, connecting with others by hosting conversations with guest coaches and at the same time continuing my love of the pursuit of learning. And so today and throughout this series, we are hearing about the passions of different coaches, learning what fires them up, what they're exploring, what they're listening to. And always, it's a fabulous opportunity for us to take what resonates with us from these passions for our own coaching practice. Now, I've just had a great warm-up session with this particular guest this week. And I do wish I'd had a couple of cups of coffee so that I could match and mirror his energy. But he's definitely someone who represents for me one of the great benefits of the old theory of the 6 degrees of separation, because I met him through another coach who has been on this podcast recently, and that was Magda Jesnak. So yeah, today's guest is one of the very few creatives I've met in the coaching industry. He's a business coach for live entertainment companies. And by chance, we share an interest in drumming. And I found out that for about 10 years, I worked very close to where he now lives in North London. So welcome, John Blackburn. How are you
Oh,
doing
Julie,
today?
thank you very much. And I really enjoyed listening to Magda's pod as well. That was like she's brilliant, isn't she? So yeah, I'm
She's lovely. Yeah.
happy to have met you through Magda. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that kind of serendipitous introduction to people that maybe you would never have met before if that hadn't have happened. So it's great. Yeah. So John, you were telling me before we came onto the episode that you are having a crazily busy time at the moment. So tell us a bit about what's happening for you at the moment.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Julie. Yes. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are having because we're recording this in the run up to we're just into December, aren't we? Is it the
Yeah,
third? So I'm sure a lot of people are having a busy run up to Christmas. And of course, a lot of people are probably trying to wind down before Christmas, as we were discussing before. But
exactly.
for me, the combination of the work that I do in live entertainment with coaching clients and also the work that I do as a drummer and a musical director, performing in shows and things. Yeah, it's really hotted up the last couple of weeks, and for the next couple of weeks is pretty busy. So yeah, there's been a lot of, as we were chatting about, there's been a lot of logistics coordinating just to make sure that, I'm in the right environment to do both things and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, at the moment, um, on tour mainly with some really good friends doing a kind of a Rat Pack, like a swing Christmas show, which is really
Nice.
fun. Yeah, really lovely. We've played some great venues so far in the run, some places I've never been before, which is quite unusual, as you might imagine. Doing that kind of work a lot for a long period of time. It's actually quite unusual to sort of encounter a venue that you haven't been to 10 times before.
Mm.
So that's been great. And then yeah, I've got the coaching clients that I work with at the moment. Everyone's kind of powering through as much as they can. A couple of them have just started quite big projects and they've just got momentum. So sort of looking at how to take a break over Christmas, but be able to pick the momentum back up on the other side of the year. I've just started trialing a couple of new things in my own coaching practice as well. So um, it's strange, isn't it? How that a lot of that stuff you would think that maybe I might pace it out. So when things are quieter with gigs, then I would try the new things in the coaching. But that isn't how it works for me. It tends to be, this is the busy, productive bit. So let's go for it.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. That's a lovely introduction so that we can get a sense of what you're up to right now. Yeah, so ahead of us talking about passion, John,
Mm.
could you say a little bit about how you got into coaching and what kind of coaching you're doing at the moment?
Oh, great. Yeah. And thanks again for inviting me on because it's not that often necessarily that we get to chat to other coaches beyond maybe the people that we trained with or have met sort of educationally. So yeah, this is great.
Mm.
So my first experience of coaching as a coachee, although I didn't know that was what it was, was my drum teacher, who Jeff Hutchinson up in the Northeast, who was and is incredible. And he, my reason to going to him was definitely the drum music education. The way that he did that was, yes, traditional music educator, also very much a mentor, and an enormous amount of really highly refined, I would say, coaching skills. He was also aware of neurolinguistic programming, NLP, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So my first interactions with him really, even though I was not consciously aware of it at the time, I think is probably what set me off on the journey that I'm currently on, both musically and coachingly. Because there was something about the way he did what he did that was different. I had other drum teachers. Obviously, we'd had other teachers in other contexts. And there was something about the way Jeff was in the world and also individually in a lesson that I just couldn't put my finger on. It was fascinating, and I loved the effect that it had on me. Anyway, fast forward, he really instilled the nature of the idea of, yes, you've got your musical development, but also what should go hand in hand with that is some kind of personal development, which will then lead to professional development. So he was recommending all kinds of books. I think the first one that really did good things for me was Mind Store, which was by Glaswegian Jack Black. And as I went through some of those books that he was pointing me in the direction of, NLP just kept coming up and up. And then, went through university, music college, went and worked on cruise ships as a drummer and MD. And it was at that point that I really started to notice that a lot of the challenges and missed opportunities in that environment were down to people maybe not having had the benefit of the same encouragement in the direction of personal development, putting it as diplomatically as I can, that I had the benefit of. And again, a lot of the problems that would arise and conflicts and loss of opportunity was down to poor communication, down to people not being able to sort of manage themselves very well, lack of clarity, all this kind of stuff that as coaches we know we are very capable of helping with. And so I became aware of all of that, and I kept being on sort of the receiving end of other people's lack of skill. And I kept reading about NLP, and and then eventually I moved to London, and I did like a 2-day training event with Dr. Badler and Paul McKenna, and met a bunch of UK and European trainers, which was amazing. And I kept reading. I just got really into, somehow I got really into this NLP stuff, and I'd started to use a lot of the things, just play with them myself, sort of on me for my own benefit. And I actually, even just thinking about it now, that the number of changes I was able to make and things I was able to do to make my own life easier, I couldn't believe that no one else had heard of it. Anyway, eventually I'm in London. I went and did my practitioner training with NLP, and I absolutely loved it. And I met, so that was a Richard Bandler, John Laval, and Kathleen Laval training in London. It's quite a large group. It was amazing. Had an incredible experience, met some brilliant people, some other people who were already actually coaching as a business, which still wasn't on my agenda yet. I was just there for my own development, really. And then what happened? Oh, and then on that course, I met June O'Driscoll and Jeff Roll, who it turns out I probably met. In fact, I did meet Jeff on that earlier weekend thing I've done with Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. But and they were amazing, and they were giving us a lot of the little group of friends that I'd established on that course. We were getting quite a lot of guidance and help from those two, and I really liked them. So eventually I then went and did my master practitioner NLP through their training company called Thoughtitude, which again was incredible. Met some more brilliant people, um, and it was only really when I did the master practitioner, because I just really want to develop those skills because I'm really into them. It was only then that I thought, oh, actually, maybe there's some people I could help with this. Maybe it would be worth building an engine or something so that I could introduce these skills and ways of thinking to some other people. Um, and then I sort of put down on my wish list, actually, I'd really like to do a coaching qualification. And then that happened. That happened a little more recently, and it was in doing that coaching qualification with June, Jeff, and that Thoughttitude. It was with doing that I thought, actually, this is really badly needed out there. This could make a huge difference to live entertainment, the people in live entertainment, way beyond what I could do if I just say set up my own production company and then ran it as I thought it should be run. And yeah, so that's how I ended up where I are. And along the way, I've like all of us, I'm sure, worked with lots of different kinds of people. I still really enjoy variety. I still really enjoy talking to other coaches. But most of my work is with live entertainment professionals, and it's usually people that I would call producers. And very simply, that's just people that actually put on shows and performances, people that have responsibilities beyond just their own performance on stage.
Mm.
And yeah, I really love it, and it's been great to see the way people have sort of taken to it and embraced it, and the changes that people have been able to make. And I'm excited about carrying it on.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a really interesting story of your journey through into coaching. And there's a few things I jotted down because they just fascinated me. What you said about your inspiring drumming teacher who was like in the world and in the lesson, he was somebody who kind of drew you to him because he was different.
Mm.
And then you went on to say, well, I tried NLP on myself. And I think that's what makes coaches stand out, isn't it? Where if we're people who actually apply the techniques, the ideas that we're encouraging other people to explore with us, so that we can enjoy the change as well for ourselves. I thought, yeah, what a progressive guy. I also felt a little bit envious when you said you trained with Bandler and McKenna, but there are opportunities, aren't there? So
Yeah, there are opportunities, and I would point out that the things that I have done with Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. In fact, Paul McKenna showed up on a couple of days of the practitioner I did in London. Those are large groups. I'm not, Richard's not talking. We're not having a one-on-one chat about my development. We're in a large group, but it was magical. It was incredible, and I absolutely. And by the way, I'm sure it's the same for people that work with people that train with John Grinder on the other side. I have no experience of that, but I'm sure that people would have similar stories about the power of it. And I would definitely encourage anyone that's interested in that or involved at all in that field to go and get some kind of an experience, whilst it's still relatively straightforward to do it, of just being in a room when he's presenting.
mm,
You can get these days, you can get a taste of it on some of the YouTube videos. You get a sense of it, but there's the being there all day and being completely immersed in the environment it was a really special experience. Like, I had some incredible things unfold for me that week, which I wasn't looking for and certainly wasn't expecting, but they happened. Which is what, again, every time I've done some training, something has happened where I've gone, oh, this is actually more, there's actually even more to this, and it's even more powerful than I thought. And I thought I knew what I was talking about. Something happened where I go, what's this? So, so yeah, do it. Go and see him. Go
yeah.
and Yeah.
I think it could be my 2025, one of my desires. Yeah. So we haven't actually kind of said this out loud, but essentially NLP is the passion that we're
Oh,
focusing
yes.
on today.
That is what we agreed, wasn't it? No, great.
Um, yeah, so I guess I'm a bit curious about how you use NLP with producers in your coaching practice, or is it simply in the conversations and the work that you have with them? Tell us more
Yeah.
about that.
Well, so the first thing to say is I am not an NLP trainer. So um, I'm really happy to talk about my experience of NLP and especially my experience of learning it and using it in my practice. But I'm sure there are other people that you will talk to in the future that will have even more to offer on it. The way that it gets used, the way that I use it in my work with entertainment people, with producers, is the same way that any other coach is using it, because fundamentally you're coaching and you're NLPing with a person, and this is a slightly NLP thing to say. Um, the content of the problem is not of that much interest. It's the structure of the problem, and NLP. One of the things that NLP gives you is a way to look at a variety of ways to look at the structure of how someone is achieving a problem rather than getting too involved in the content of it. So yeah, the way that I would use it with producers is exactly the same way that you're using it with your clients and the way that everybody's using it when they're using it. And I suppose what I can say is that as you, it's the same in any field worth getting your teeth into, isn't it? It's the same with playing the drums. It's the same with coaching as an entity itself. There's so much available stuff to learn that whether you realize it or not, you have to, right from the beginning, you're making choices about the bits of it that most interest you. And those are probably going to be the bits that you become the most familiar with and the most comfortable with and the most aware of. So they're the bits that you use the most.
Mm.
I would say probably the the bits that are of NLP that I use the most consciously would be the meta model, which, if people aren't already aware, the meta model gets described in a lot of different ways. It's a language model. And I think the easiest way to describe it is a way of listening and then a way of identifying what the next most useful question might be. That's the way I think about the meta model.
Mm.
Other people will describe it differently.
Mm.
But fundamentally for me, the meta model is a way of listening to another person.
That's
And
really interesting what you say about there being parts of ways of working that you feel drawn to and you tend to use more frequently. And I feel the same about Dilts' neurological levels. You know, it's just a way of
great
seeing
model.
the
Yeah.
world, isn't it? Or and as you were talking, I was thinking I also enjoy working with people to help them find resource within themselves. So stuff like anchoring, I just find is so useful. But John, can you think of an example where you have used meta model to identify the next question? Have you had a sort of an aha moment with
Oh,
meta
sure.
models?
Well,
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, the great thing about all of these the different things that have come out of NLP and that now are very much, I suppose, within NLP, um, is that you could probably use one part in isolation and get the jobs done. You know, there's with so much of it, and of course, the more of the different things that you pull in, the more powerful uh, experiences and you can have with people. But the meta model, okay. I one of the ways I decided to practice and get better at the meta model was I picked inside of the meta model are laid out a variety of different language patterns that you can listen for, and I had a certain level of comfort through going through the various bits of training and reading the books and thinking about it. I had a certain level of comfort with all of them, of course. And what I noticed was that the bit of the meta model, the pattern that they call modal operators, I just which is the I must, I have to, I will, I can. It's that bit of a thing that someone might say. They kept the power of simply adjusting one of those or adjusting the tonality with which it is said could produce for someone. I I noticed it in some bits of training and then in some bits of work that I was doing. I thought, well, you know what? Actually, I'm just going to pick modal operators as my first thing to really target. So what I did was, I thought modal operators before I started doing work, so I was really paying attention. But then just out in the world and watching YouTube interviews, I was like, right, I'm just going to really listen for the modal operators. And then, of course, the more you do that, you become more and more aware when they pop up, and you become, then it becomes more and more useful because it's just very present in your mind. And so I would say that the most, for me so far, modal operators have been the most interesting bit of language for me to pay attention to, which allows me to then help someone create impactful shifts. So, specific example, a client I'm currently working with, let me see if I can get this right. She was telling herself that she had to complete tasks A, B, and C, and she had to do it. And you might listen to that and you think, and maybe that fits with what the goal is. You think, well, yeah, she does have to do that. Okay, fine. But she wasn't doing it, even though she had to do it. And she was then, of course, she felt bad about the fact she wasn't doing the thing she had to do. And so we just sort of chatted about it. And I said, well, okay, what about you have to do them? Can you do them? And she went, oh yeah, I can do them. And I went, all right. Well, what is it like if you say, I can do X, Y, Z? She went like, you could just see her relax, Oh, yeah, actually, I can do those things. And then she just started saying, I can do, actually, I can do this. And then it turned out that, for example, because the work could be done there, right? That might be it, but it wasn't. Because can do, she felt relaxed and she felt much better about the idea of doing it, but she wasn't sort of compelled to do it. It was almost like it had gone too far the other way for her. And what she discovered was, or what we discovered together was, I will was the set of words to say that took her from wanting and being able to do a thing to actually doing it. And I just think that's incredible. I didn't have to get her to close her eyes. There was no like trance. There was no like moving submodalities around. There was no, sort of hypnotic language. There was no, we didn't have to do any of that. It was this word. And what we had to do was find a way to just to rejig that. And then she now consistently does all those things and feels good doing them. So then
That's
that
a
might have been a
fantastic
longer answer.
example.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again, John.
That might have been a longer answer than you were looking for, but that's
No, actually, I think it's fantastic because it struck me that it may be revelatory on two levels. One is that, NLP, like you said, is so potentially overwhelming, the breadth and depth of what it can possibly do. But so just taking one small thing can make a big change. But also, I think coaches who aren't NLP trained can also, having listened to you, go, oh, so that's what I've been doing when I've been taught to
right.
focus on those particular words. So they can see that actually they're practicing aspects of NLP without truly necessarily knowing they've been doing it.
Yeah.
And then as you were talking about modal operators, I was thinking, wow, yeah, behind a lot of those shoulds, oughts, musts, there's a lot of beliefs and values
Mm.
beneath all of that. And so I'm going to ask you what might be a tricky question, but let's just see where it goes.
Bring it on.
Yeah, because people might not be able to see completely your sweatshirt, but
Oh,
I know
sorry.
that it says heavily meditated, not heavily
Yes.
medicated.
No,
So,
yeah.
so I know we can just try this one out. Yeah. So I was thinking, at the risk of being stereotypical about creatives and producers in particular, are there any beliefs that emerge out of coaching that appear to come up commonly for people who are in that industry, and how would you handle them?
Yeah, oh, brilliant. Yeah, of course there are. And well, a sort of what in coaching land we might, but which of course nobody outside of coaching land would understand, but what in coaching land we might label a sort of scarcity mindset or something like that. And the way it emerges for a lot of producers is these beliefs. It's from the culture, isn't it? So it's this idea of well, of course, you can't make money out of a such and such a show, or there's only so many tickets you can sell to a, this kind of venue, or do you know what I mean? So there's
Hmm.
lots of those kind of
Hmm.
inherited nonsense.
Boxing and
Yes,
narrowing, and yeah.
and of course, what's happened is they've perhaps been out there in the world without being aware of those thoughts, and they might have tried a few things, and maybe some of them haven't gone as planned. And then as they've been sort of consoling themselves, someone said, "Oh, well, of course, that was never going to work," or something like that. Who know? Of course, you can't get people to come out on a Friday night now, something like that. And of course, it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. But it's very easy to believe. So
Hmm.
that would be one example of a belief. And how do we navigate that? Well, there's so many. I mean, as a fan of Robert Dilts, someone who has written so much about belief systems and the mechanics and the structure of beliefs, and um, so I don't know if I have one standard approach necessarily to knocking those out. The first easy example, I guess, would be counter examples, wouldn't it?
Hmm.
Is that,
Yes.
then there's, and I would say that's a slightly low resolution way of doing it, maybe sometimes, because if someone's really committed to something,
Hmm.
just ignore them. Um,
Or sometimes
but
perhaps echoing back what you've heard, because we can knock these phrases out quite quickly, like, we've been kind of joking around with each other about the never, or the,
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
everybody. And sometimes just hearing that back to you can go, oh, well, actually, no, it's not everybody, or it's
Right. So
not
that's
every night.
amazing. So that's I'd put that in the box of like a meta model type approach. So you've noticed a generalization, or I've noticed, we have noticed, one notices a generalization. Just thought I'd go through every permutation available there. So one notices a generalization, a very broad statement which indicates a belief, like the word just is incredible for that, isn't it? And always, never, all this kind of thing. And yeah, just by uh, a first gentle step can be to, with good humor, draw attention to the statement. Absolutely, with an always, or um, whatever it happens to be. And then sometimes that's enough, isn't it? With some people, you can see the clockwork because actually they didn't realize that that's how they were thinking about it. Then they find their own counter examples, and then sometimes you'll see this, won't you? You'll say, "Is it so you've never sold out a show before?" And they go, "Well, no, of course I've sold out shows before." Oh, that's interesting. Tell me about that. You know, so sometimes something like that can be enough just to give them. What are we looking for? Initially, we're looking for a little nudge to create flexibility, aren't we? We don't necessarily have to obliterate every opportunity.
Mhm.
But it might just be that what they need is a bit more movement around how they think, what they think. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That could be it. If it's more, um, so that would be, I would say that's a meta model informed way. You've identified an interesting piece of language which indicates a fairly charged belief, an overgeneralization, and we're going to have them investigate that in some way.
Mm.
There are also within NLP, there are, so we're in NLP land again. I guess there are things that you can do. In order for someone to hold a belief, they must have a way of representing that belief to themselves internally. Okay. And one of the things that you can do is you can sort of model, which is to ask questions. Sorry, everybody, I'm talking to coaches, aren't I? Everybody knows this. So you can model their strategy for creating the result that is that belief in the moment. So what do they say to themselves in their head? What images do they have floating around? And how does it feel? What feeling is created when they say, oh, well, I can't earn enough money from this. You can never earn enough money from, a show about jazz or whatever it happened to be. Find out how how are they achieving the result of feeling that way about that internally. And then again, you can usually, just with little subtle shifts in that representation, which you could do with the language, which you could do with what in NLP we refer to as submodalities, which is the individual characteristics of a representation. So for example, and again, I know I'm speaking to people that perhaps know even more about it than I do, but within an image that someone might have in their head, which you may, by the way, have to get them to work quite hard to discover. Like, these things are unconscious, so they're not available immediately when you just ask the first question. Anyway, so the qualities of the image, for example, is it in color, is it black and white? Where does the image appear in their sort of spatial field? Is it a still picture or a movie? Is it lights? All that kind of thing. So that would be some, and there are many more submodalities of an image. And then it's the same with auditory. Is it and it's not the important thing is, again, we're dealing with the structure of the representation, not necessarily the content. I'm not necessarily, the content of the image is important to them, but it may not be that important to us. The structure of the image is important. And the same is true then with sound, auditory information, and of course the kinesthetic. And each one of those things, once you understand how they're building that representation within themselves, you can sometimes just shift one aspect, one submodality in one of those things, and the whole thing changes. And the classic one that there's a lot of videos of Richard Bandler doing is he'll get somebody to identify the movement, that typically the spin of a feeling internally, and then he'll just get them to slow it down, stop it,
or turn it the other way,
and then reverse it. And well, here's a sentence for you that shouldn't work. I mean, it does every time, So it's amazing how you can actually, the information gathering is the bulk of the work, isn't it? And then the adjusting it is tiny, really.
Yes.
And hopefully, and as elegant as possible.
Yeah. John, you and I could talk about your passion and my passion too for NLP forever, couldn't we? And we've covered meta models, submodalities, neurological levels, all sorts. And I'm sitting here thinking, and there's also time. And I'm very much a through time person. So I've got half an eye on the fact that really we need to start wrapping up. So yeah, I usually finish with 3 quite quick questions, but I think you've answered one of them, which was about, getting success in relation to your passion. So I'm going to go on to the next one, which is, can you tell us one thing that you'd want coaches who are listening and watching to take away about your passion of NLP?
Oh, well, that's edging dangerously close to advice, isn't it?
Just one
Uh,
thing that you'd like to rub off.
I think that the flexibility and um, the ability that I have to use NLP stuff, apart from the fact that I've had really good training and really good teachers, I think that my abilities there come from the fact that I'm prepared to play with it. And maybe as I think about other coach friends of mine who are really, really excellent and really excellent at a lot of different things, but maybe aren't as confident, say, with some of the things that they do. I've noticed that they haven't just played with it. And in the same way that when you're, it will be true for you, I'm sure, when you're doing your drumming. Yeah, I think to really internalize stuff and to get comfortable with it, whatever your level of knowledge, whatever that is, to get the most out of the resources that you have. I think that element of play and being prepared to just try things, like just on yourself. What happens if I do this? And oh, this guy said this. Well, let's actually sit down with a pen and paper. Let's do it. Like, what is the experience for me of doing a visual squash in this particular way? Or what happen? How does it feel when I do a swish type thing, but I do it in this way instead of the way I would normally do it for myself? And that, I think that a lot of I think a lot of the confidence that I have and the competence that I have comes from just being prepared to and enjoying actually playing with it myself. That's my thing.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's grand. Thank you so much. And a very last question then, John, is for people who want to get to know more about you or to work with you directly, how do they get hold of you?
Oh, brilliant. I mean, maybe we can put these links in the thing as well. But
Mm.
so I'm Coach John Blackburn on Instagram. That's a good one. And there's plenty of me on Instagram. And I'm also on LinkedIn, John Blackburn. You'll find me fairly easily. And I've got the same facial hair currently as I do in my LinkedIn. So that should be all right. Same glasses, possibly the same shirt. And then my website is john-blackburn.com. And I love talking to other coaches. I really enjoyed all of it. It was great chatting to Magda, who I met at a networking thing. It's, those people that I met doing the training with both with June and Jeff and with Richard Bandler's thing. You know, I just, there's something a bit like musicians and entertainment people. There's something about coaches that I really like. So I'm always up for a natter, even if it's not, lead work or anything. So yeah, I'd love to hear.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. And so, yeah, my enormous thanks to you, John, for taking time out of, I know, what is a very, very crazily busy time for you at the moment. So, yes, John Blackburn, business coach to the live entertainment industry. Thank you so much for being my guest with passion on 2020 Coaching Convos today. And to 2020 podcast followers, if you enjoyed this episode with John, please go ahead, share and subscribe to it, and tell me what you want to hear more about in 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb.